All right, great day, everyone. This is Carlos, aka CJ. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day today. We are doing a live stream simulcast, not only to multiple different venues, but also simulcasting across multiple platforms, just because obviously this conversation is just so important. And very excited today to be joined by Taylor Hudak. Taylor is a journalist and also the editor with acTVism Munich. I've been following her work here, and she's just been doing a fabulous job with the reporting, everything that's going on with Julian Assange, and just how important the entire conversation is. So, Taylor, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for being here. And like I said, kudos to you because I have been following your work and everything that's transpired. So for our listeners, why don't you share a little bit about yourself and the work that you do with acTVism Munich, please?
Yes, so I am a journalist and editor with acTVism Munich. We are an independent nonprofit media organization based in Munich, Germany. We publish our video content onto YouTube and onto our website. And we talk about issues that are often suppressed in the mainstream and corporate media. I have been covering Julian Assange's case in particular quite extensively. I was in London covering his extradition hearings. And I also cover issues related to U.S. foreign policy and issues related to free speech and a free press, in addition to Assange's case.
Yeah, excellent. And like I said, in terms of the discussion, we've been following along here on our platform, whether it's Rogue News or also the Gadfly, and just how important it is. And if you think back to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks and the vast information, I know a little bit of it has every little bit of the Assange situation has a different meaning to everyone. And as a journalist, you've been extensively involved with it. Why don't you share a little bit with our listeners why this work is just so important to you and your passion with it, please?
Yes, I mean, this case is so important because the outcome of this case will possibly set a very chilling precedent on the First Amendment. And it impacts everybody, not just journalists and activists, but it impacts the general public because it could impede on your right to know. The United States government is seeking to criminalize standard and normal journalistic activity that people have been engaging in for hundreds of years. It's seeking to criminalize source protection, and the United States is specifically targeting one individual, Julian Assange, and his fate is very much tied to the fate of other journalists and other activists because it will impair on one's ability to fight for the causes they care about and do their investigative journalism as well. So it's really important.
Yeah, and I don't think that can be understated enough. And I really want our listeners to understand that this is, yes, it's about Julian Assange also, but it's also a lot more significance in terms of the impact, the potential attack on journalism, also just in terms of free speech, and that's one of the things that's, in our Constitution. And if you take a look at the work that Julian has done, it's basically been a victimless crime altogether. And one could even argue whether it's even a crime. I had posted earlier in the comments as we were going live, and someone was like, well, wait a minute, is there even really need for a pardon? Because he really hasn't done anything wrong at this point, Taylor.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So right now, many of us are advocating for a pardon because essentially that will free Assange and it will save his life. It just will. Now, it is true that a pardon does imply that there was some wrongdoing involved, and there was no wrongdoing on behalf of Julian Assange. So it does seem as if a pardon is not appropriate. What would really be appropriate is for the DOJ to drop the charges. However, his life is at stake here. So if we could get that pardon to save his life, that's why we are fighting for that. Now, many people may be wondering, well, why would President Trump pardon Assange? It is his DOJ that has requested for Assange to be arrested while he was in the Ecuadorian embassy. And the reason why we're advocating for this is because Trump is obviously is in a very interesting position right now. He's probably not happy with the establishment, and he has been battling the deep state throughout his entire presidency. So we are saying, well, what better way for President Trump to stand up to the deep state than to pardon Julian Assange, the man who exposed the deep state, especially through Vault 7. It would be a really impactful way for President Trump to also shape his legacy in a way that shows that he actually does care about a free press, because many people, his opponents within the Democratic establishment, criticize him for being very anti-free press. So this is a way to reshape his legacy, and he will be remembered favorably for pardoning Assange if he chooses to do so.
Yeah, very, very well said. And if you think back to just the ideas of the 2016 election in regards to the information that was released by WikiLeaks, the DNC server, in which, there's been several people who have pointed out that it wasn't WikiLeaks. William Benny, who has pointed out in terms of the data transfer, and through that entire 2016 election, Taylor, Trump really was talking about WikiLeaks and the information, and really, I don't want to say that it was instrumental in terms of getting Trump elected, but at the same time, he exposed so much criminality of the deep state. And what better way during this time period that we're in to strike back at the deep state by getting his, and you stated perfectly, his Department of Justice to back off in terms of Julian and allowing his freedom.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It would be a real statement to the Democratic establishment and the deep state, as I said. Now, you're correct in saying that President Trump, of course, praised WikiLeaks while on the campaign trail in 2016. Yet when he's been asked about the organization today, he said he knows nothing about WikiLeaks. To me, that's a typical political move, something a politician would say. They will highlight the work of an organization if it benefits them, and if it doesn't, then they won't do so. So I saw that as typical politics. I think that one of the main problems within the White House right now is Mike Pompeo, who is the U.S. Secretary of State. He has made statements about WikiLeaks, calling it a hostile intelligence organization, made references to Assange and WikiLeaks, to Assange being a criminal and WikiLeaks being a criminal enterprise, which is not true, but that is his perspective that he has shared. So it is a little bit worrisome as to what information Trump is receiving from members in his own cabinet. Fortunately, William Barr is going to be leaving his office, or he has already. He will be replaced, and he is said to be one of the people within the White House that was very against a pardon for Assange. So there's a little bit more hope there.
Yeah, absolutely. And in previous interviews that I've done, I've really tried to personalize and identify Julian as a person, as a father, as a son, and really try to make that emotional plea to people to understand that. And almost at the point now where it's at the level of torture. But here recently, Taylor, we've had a multitude of people transcending across party lines, across the waters to the UK, who have really been stating, hey, you know what? We do need to do something for Julian. The likes of Sarah Palin, who was honest enough, and no matter how you feel about her, she was humble and saying, hey, you know what? I made a mistake. Several years ago, I had a completely different opinion of Julian. I realized I made a mistake. He is a truth teller. He is in some ways a patriot for sharing his information that he did in terms of the corruption, in terms of the vast amount of crimes that have been committed by certain alphabet agencies. So would you like to provide an update just in terms of your work and upcoming? I know that there's a hearing upcoming. So what are your thoughts on that, and where are we going from here, Taylor?
Yes, so the judge, Judge Vanessa Baraitser, is going to be making her decision on January 4th. So a little less than a week. She will either approve the extradition or decline the extradition. I think she also could postpone her decision, but it is stated that likely either side is going to appeal, and then this will be heard at the appellate court. I do believe, though, that there has to be an approval for it to be appealed. So this process could take quite a while. I am not sure what she's going to rule, of course. I hope that she's going to decline the extradition, but she has a 96% rate of approving extradition. So the odds are not necessarily in Assange's favor. But one important thing that I do want to bring up to the audience is that there has been this really extraordinary phone call that was released by Project Veritas. Some people may be watching right now and say, okay, well, Project Veritas doesn't have the greatest track record. How do we know if this phone call is authentic? And just to backtrack here, this phone call was between Julian Assange and a U.S. State Department attorney, Cliff Johnson, from August of 2011. And this phone call is authentic because Christian Hrafnsson, who was with WikiLeaks at this time, has been with WikiLeaks for since the early years. He stated on RT that this phone call is authentic and that it has not been edited. So you can trust what's been placed in this phone call. I don't know if you want to play a little bit of it, but I could get more into that as well.
Yeah, why don't I play just a little bit of it, because we had mentioned it in previous broadcasts in regards to that bombshell information, and then also if I remember correctly, this was Project Veritas is the one who released information. So let's just play just a little bit of this so that our listeners can get and it was great reporting on your part. So I want to share this real briefly.
August 2011, between Julian Assange and a U.S. State Department attorney, Cliff Johnson, was released by Project Veritas.
Mr. Assange, hello, it's Cliff Johnson.
G'day, Cliff. Thank you for calling back. Yeah, so the situation is that we have intelligence that the State Department database archive of 250,000 diplomatic cables, including the classified cables, is being spread around and is to the degree that we believe that within the next few days it will become public.
The 75-minute phone.
Now, most people will not, garner the most information from there, but I think it speaks volumes in terms of the character of Julian. He went above and beyond to really protect the State Department, to help protect any individuals. Can you kind of rehash or recap that a little bit around that conversation, Taylor, for us, please?
Absolutely. So again, Assange called the U.S. State Department to warn them that the file location to unredacted encrypted cables were being circulated by a former rogue WikiLeaks employee, Daniel Domscheit-Berg. Daniel Domscheit-Berg was suspended a year prior, but he had access to this file location. Now, the file location, you could have that, but it will mean nothing, and you couldn't access the cables unless you had the decryption password. It is said that he was also circulating that password. However, the password was also made very public in a book by David Lee and Luke Harding of The Guardian. This book came out several months earlier to when this phone call took place in February of 2011. So with that password being publicly available, or the decryption key you could call it, and also the file location being circulated by this former rogue employee, eventually somebody could put two and two together and access these unredacted cables. And Assange was very concerned about this because they were obviously unredacted and the proper redaction process wasn't applied in this situation. At that time, WikiLeaks was still going through this process, but they weren't finished redacting the entire database. So months prior to this, they were working on the redaction process, and this individual was circulating this file location. And so Assange called the US State Department to warn them about this and said, we have tried to notify our German attorneys to encourage this individual, Daniel Domscheit-Berg, to desist and stop sharing this file location. However, WikiLeaks had no legal standing in Germany because the cables did not belong to WikiLeaks, they belonged to the US State Department. So he was encouraging the US State Department to legally intervene and also up their security measures, as well as notify any individual who has been in contact with the US Embassy to warn them that this information could go public, not by WikiLeaks, but by other minor media organizations. So Assange was warning them to take action, and they actually never did. In fact, at the end of the phone call, Assange tells Cliff Johnson that he would like to have somebody come to his location in Norfolk, and at the location, Assange would be able to help him get access to the file location and the decryption password so that the State Department could intervene and help them through the redaction process and any other security measures they needed to take. The attorney on the call said, yes, he will follow up. However, they never did. And within a few days, that database was published first on Cryptome, unredacted. And if you go to Cryptome's website to this day, on their homepage, they actually make note of this, saying we did publish this database on this date, and it was prior to the date that WikiLeaks published it. However, it is Julian Assange who is being prosecuted for the publication of this material and nobody else.
Right, and pretty much through that entire conversation, it just kind of just shows that obviously that there was a lot of care, a lot of passion, a lot of making sure that everyone remained safe through it, and just proof that in terms of his work with WikiLeaks, and by the way, when you look at the track record of WikiLeaks, I don't think anything has ever had to be redacted in terms of the accuracy of their reporting and their information. And when you talk about a great crime, and how, Taylor, as a journalist, how do you personally feel about this in terms of, if we do see Julian extradited to the United States, we do see, and I believe what he's experiencing right now is a form of torture. I think they're kind of hoping that something happens to him along the way. But how do you see this playing this out as a journalist? How does this impact you and your thoughts on America and freedom of speech and everything else that's associated with that?
Yeah, I mean, it tells me that the United States does not value the First Amendment. It does not value a free press, and that they want to continue censoring people. And they also want to set a precedent in which it becomes criminal to literally receive information, just receiving information and publishing it that is classified or either against or embarrassing to the US government. They want to criminalize that behavior. So it's very scary. And I'm really concerned about if this case does follow through and Assange is extradited and convicted, our world's going to look very, very different. I really do believe that. And you mentioned the aspect of torture, and Assange is a torture victim. The UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, Niels Melzer, has stated that Assange has been subjected to torture, and he wrote a few letters to the UK government to make them aware of this, and they failed to act appropriately. And they are required to conduct an impartial investigation into allegations of torture, and they still have not. However, 16 or 17 British MPs have wrote a letter to the UK Ministry of Justice requesting to meet with Assange to discuss the torture that he has been subjected to. And I can tell you as well that if he is extradited to the United States, the chances of him being convicted are extremely, extremely high. And also this prison conditions he would face here in the US are awful, absolutely terrible. And that's a whole other thing to get into. Hopefully we don't have to ever discuss that in the future, but it's possible.
Well, yes, and also just for future whistleblowers, imagine the impact of witnessing what's happening to Julian currently, and apparently, under the Obama era, we had this whistleblower protection thing that was never followed. It was never really taken seriously. That we're gonna protect them, and we're gonna take a look at this information. And you take a look at Edward Snowden, you take a look at Julian Assange, and how we've handled these things, and it just speaks volumes in terms of the corruptions of the intelligence agencies, where we have this this system that's in place where if you're banking and you rig the markets, or you do everything else and you're a criminal, you can pay a fine and get away with it. But those that expose the truth, where truth becomes an enemy of the state, is when we have grave concern, Taylor.
And that's exactly what's happening right now. I think that this prosecution is also intended to not only set a legal precedent, but also scare other whistleblowers from providing journalists with information, because it also just criminalizes the journalist from obtaining classified material. So it would prevent many whistleblowers from ever reaching out to journalists, because they could put that journalist at risk. And of course, they would be put at risk. Their whole career in life would essentially be over. And then also, too, it's supposed to scare journalists, or meant to scare journalists possibly, to not publish this information in fear that they too will have the same fate as Julian Assange. So it's really, really serious. And unfortunately, it's not being talked about enough in the mainstream press. So a lot of people are not aware that this is even happening.
Yeah, and we don't have to go into full detail in regards to, Julian and the Patriot movement here in the U.S. that believed at one time through the Q group that Julian was working behind the scenes with Trump, and he was already been taken to the United States, and it really it was doing a great disservice, because I think Trump is one of those persons who really looks at everything from his work at the Apprentice. You remember when he was on the Apprentice and he was tweeting out still that my ratings were better than Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's very much into applause and I'm not sure whether his dad didn't acknowledge him or whatever, but Trump is into that. And I firmly believe that if we could have put more public pressure, or the awareness that we've witnessed the past months, where you had a multitude of people who were tweeting out, who were actively advocating for the release, the pardon of Julian Assange, and there's still no action to take place. And really, at this point, there's no reason that and I've been very vocal about this, that it is time. It is time for Trump to take decisive action to free Julian, to free Snowden, bring Bill Binney in, and let's expose the criminality of these same people who are attempting to manipulate an election and to alter the outcome. It's just such a concerning time right now, Taylor, that can't be understated.
Absolutely. And just yesterday, we learned, you mentioned Bill Binney. I want to bring this up. He is being targeted. I haven't researched too extensively on this, to be honest, but there's a hashtag that is going around, #IBelieveBinney. I encourage everybody to please check that out. He is being targeted. He is an NSA whistleblower. He is obviously a target of the FBI and the American intelligence community, and he is somebody that also needs our support right now. And I guarantee, I can't speak for Assange right now, but I believe that he would be standing up to support people like Bill Binney, brave whistleblowers who are being unfairly targeted. I believe he's being hit with, if you go to, there's a hashtag. My good friend and colleague Susie Dawson has really been at the forefront of talking about his situation here and pushing for people to become engaged with this hashtag. Please do. Bill Binney is a great guy. He needs our support. And yes, there's been some really serious things going on regard to drones at his own home, which sounds quite insane that could happen in the United States, but it does. And it's actually something that's been documented and published on WikiLeaks website as well. So very serious stuff, but I also wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. And again, the hashtag is #IBelieveBinney.
Yeah, we're friends of Bill Binney. He's been on our program before with the help of Harley Schlanger and LaRouche PAC and the Schiller Institute. I'm not sure if you're familiar with their work. They are based there in Germany, but Harley Schlanger does a weekly program with us, and he shared in regards to what's happening with Bill Binney, and we have no reason to not believe anything. And so if Bill Binney's telling you that there are direct weapons that can be targeted on individuals, then he's telling the truth. And if you think about this time that we're in, if there's any individuals who could work to expose the amount of what Bill Binney knows as a whistleblower, it's him as an individual. So Bill, if you're listening in, you're in our thoughts and prayers as well, and we will do our effort to kind of help. I know he's been tweeting out to Donald Trump, to General Michael Flynn, everyone trying to bring awareness to that this is occurring with him. Taylor, I also want to ask, I'm at a standstill in terms of what I've been doing to try to help with Julian, whether it's retweeting, posting, sharing. I know that there's also on the White House website, there's a contact form. What else should we be doing, in your opinion, to really try to help at this point?
Well, there is, if you are on Twitter, I know not everybody is, but first, if you are on Twitter, there is an initiative where you can tweet at a list of individuals who are pretty close to Trump and ask them for a pardon. Again, be polite about it. I know it's very easy to get passionate about it, but just like some nice tweets asking for a pardon, then tweeting at some of Trump's closest advisors. You could find that on, I believe it is the DEA campaign's website or Assange Defense website. And you could find information on how to do that. So definitely encouraging for a pardon on social media is important, using the hashtag pardon Assange. And then also too, you can donate, of course, to Assange's legal fund. His fiancee, Stella Morris, at Stella Morris, the #1 on Twitter. She has tweeted a lot about how you can help the situation in general. And then it also has the link if you would like to donate to help with the legal defense fund. And so like I said, January 4th, just about a week, there's going to be the judge's decision being handed down. And so if you're in the DC area, Action for Assange is hosting a series of events on Saturday or Sunday, January 3rd, and Monday, January 4th. They begin at noon. If you go to their website, action4assange.com, you can find out more information about that. You could also follow them on Twitter at action_4Assange. I myself will be tweeting out about it. I may be there with them doing their actions if I can make it out there. I'm not too sure at this point, but if you're in the area, please do. But there's things that are not just happening in DC. There are also initiatives taking place in New York City. For international viewers, there are events taking place in the UK, of course, outside the Old Bailey Courthouse, and as well as in Germany, I know, and I believe also New Zealand. Pretty much, and that's not all of them. It's all over the world. There's going to be actions. Yeah, so this is where you would like to go to that Twitter account, Action for Assange. You can find where your closest protest for Assange will be taking place, because I believe that they are promoting the actions that are going to be happening all over the world. So yeah, that's a great way to make a difference.
Yeah. Now, Taylor, will you be attending or virtually the hearing? I know that you tweeted out
yes.
So will you be attending there at the hearing, or is it a virtual type event?
Virtual. So I will not be in the UK at this time. I was last time, but I won't be there because it's just not just, but it's the one-day decision. I'm able to cover it remotely, so I will be here in the US covering that. And yes, I will have an update very soon after that decision is made. I will be tweeting about it, of course, and keeping everybody informed, and then also talking about what could happen next. Like I said, either side is likely to appeal, but I think we'll learn more once we know that final decision that will be handed down on the 4th.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in terms of your work as a journalist, as an editor with acTVism Munich, I know it's challenging right now during these times and everything. So I just want to ensure, like, for our listeners, how can they follow your work, and then also how can they also support your work with acTVism journalism, please?
Yes, so thank you for bringing that up. acTVism Munich, again, that is the organization that I work for. We are a nonprofit independent news organization, and you can find us on YouTube and as well as on Twitter at acTV. Yes, that is our YouTube on the screen right now. Make sure you do subscribe to our channel. And then also too, we have started a crowdfunding campaign. We do it every winter around the holiday season. We have a crowdfunding campaign, so you can donate to our organization. It's really, really useful. We are completely independent. We do not take money from any corporations, any businesses. We are 100% donor funded from our viewers. So donations is where we get our money from, and it goes a long way. It's so much appreciated. And we do not even monetize our content on YouTube. So we are not even getting any ad revenue on YouTube. That is a moral decision that we all chose to make when I wasn't there during the formative years, but it is a decision that we all collectively are sticking with, not to monetize any of our content. So donations are super important. If you could help out, and even if you can't, that's completely understandable. Circulating the link and sharing our work is so important. We cover, again, a lot of issues related to U.S. foreign policy. We've had interviews with Edward Snowden. We've had interviews with Glenn Greenwald, I believe Noam Chomsky as well. and Richard Wolff, a number of individuals, and as well as Kristen Hrafnsson, the editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks. So do check that out. You can follow me on Twitter as well.
Yep, I have that brought up currently. So it's _ Taylor Hudak, and then also it looks like you have an Instagram account as well for folks to follow your work. So yeah, keep up the fabulous job that you guys are doing. Independent media is just so important right now, and I really appreciate your time, Taylor, today and sharing with our listeners. So for those tuning in, please visit those links. They're in the description of this interview. Like and share. Taylor, any closing thoughts before we wrap up this interview?
Yeah, so I want to thank you for having me. It was great to be here. I'm always so happy to inform people about Assange's case and his situation. I want to leave off with saying that whether or not you're a journalist or an activist, this case does impact you. As I said at the beginning of the show, it impacts your right to know and to have information. So please support Assange, and please make sure that you share independent news coverage on his situation. There are a handful of journalists who've been doing a great job covering this case. Go to the protests, make some noise on social media as well. And if we do say if he is extradited, if the judge does approve the extradition, it's really, really important that we all keep fighting and not lose hope and just keep the fire going.
Very well said, Taylor. Thank you so much. And for our listeners tuning in, appreciate you being here. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much, Taylor.
Thank you.